Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mom Series, Misunderstanding of Multiplicity. My name is Maria. Thank you for joining me. So today I wanted to talk about the brain. And the brain is making a very sexy scientific comeback, especially among people with D.I.D, formerly known as MPD. Okay, so when the brain is in the media and the brain is being given all this exciting new research, it's going to affect the way we look at any mental health label, learning, how we perceive life. The brain is important. It's our master connector to everything, to the universe. It's our energy. It's everything, right? So um, it's become very, very cool to um, high profile people, people that are even looking to see if they're in the right careers, jobs, if they want to switch careers, if people just want to work on their business and get better skills, to go have what's called SPECT MRIs. And if people are just really having a lot of difficulty, they keep falling into patterns that are labeled pathological. So think of it as, I guess the way I'm thinking of it, I'm asking everyone to think of it as I think we're in an era right now, which is very exciting, but also kind of scary too, where we want to bring awareness to mental health conditions. We want to take the stigma away. We want people to understand it's not like what is shown in the media, whether it's schizophrenia, whether it's substance usage disorder or what we used to call addictions, whether it's eating uh, disorders, whether it's homelessness, whether it's dementias or Alzheimer's or whatever it is. The media tends to over dramatize, over sensationalize, and like I've said on my channel for a long time, is with MPD, D.I.D, multiple personality dissociative identity disorder, it's really ramped up to the highest level of, oh my God, these people have super brains. There's killers among the alters. There's sex vixens. There's aggressive, assertive. There's nasty. There's criminal. There's deviant behavior. They're all protectors, they're all gatekeepers, and they all just are badasses, and they're all there to torture and persecute. And just, we've seen the same thing over and over again. And from 2009, I've been out here telling you that's not what it is. It can be for sometimes to a certain level, but that's not what it is. That's not the more common presentation. So it's the same way with brains. When people make diagnoses, frank diagnoses, like ruling out everything else and saying you are frankly this, they have seen a lot of overlapping in the brain. They could say there are characteristics that are, I do see where you have a little bipolar kind of activity where the brain that would be that would light up and attenuate and look a certain shape during hypomania would do this. Or the part of your brain that would receive information and process it and then be able to repeat it back and then recall it later, like with attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity or attenuating problems, you're kind of got a little of this. So you can look at any part of the brain on any given day, and it cannot be standardized until it's frankly straight up in your face. Whole brain trunk, or this whole part of the brain is full of plaque, or this part of the brain has lesions. The spinal cord is doing this, the cortex is doing that. So when you're trying to get a picture of the brain, it's really important to understand that everything that's going on in the brain, a healthy brain and a not so healthy brain, is fluctuating every day and also reacting to everything. Stressors in the environment, biological um, things that are going on in your body, um, medically compensating, substances that you're taking prescribed or elsewise, coffee, um, alcohol, um, tea, coffee, alcohol, energy drinks, all of that stuff affects the brain. Your alertness, your attenuating, right? Okay. Lack of sleep, um, how you learn, writing down, repeating it back, visualizing, all of this is very important. Brain is very important. More and more people are going to clinics to get um, brain scans to figure out what part of my brain do I need to develop more, what weaknesses do I have in my brain, or potential diagnoses that um, that are I need to look out for. That what am I at risk for? Um, and there's a very high-profile doctor named Dr. Daniel Amen, who is in Amen Clinics, and he does these SPECT um, brain scans. Now, a SPECT scan is simply a single emission um, of a photonic tomography. It looks singularly at what part is attenuating and standing out and lighting up, and what part is shrinking, and what does that control? What does that help you with? So it kind of just zeroes in a little better on those parts of the brain that are executive function, involuntary, are working together with other parts of the brain, pathways, and what's going on around you and me. So there's been a lot of research about DID, MPD, what it used to be called DID, and the MPD DID brain, the ADD, attention deficit brain, the traumatic brain, the brain that has been traumatized, traumatic brain injury, concussion, um, stroke. Um, Many of these things overlap. We're not there yet to be able to say DID can 100% be proven by an MRI scan. And I want to be clear about saying that we are not 100% there yet. We are in infancy to toddlerhood. There are some things you can definitely see that are different in a DID brain, but then you have to look at the interpretation of it. How is it being interpreted? There is still a whole bunch of neuroscientists and neurologists and psychiatrists that are saying, okay, so the hippocampus and the amygdala are smaller in a DID brain. And this is true. The amygdala, which controls your fright, your fear, how you learn to control fear, how you learn to respond to fear, your fight, flight, freeze, fawn, faint, whatever, is smaller in DID brains. Your hippocampus is smaller. Your precuneus area of your brain that is really busy in looking at the what just happened and recalling what happened and recalling it accurately and perceiving things around us spatially and perception is a little more busy. It's a little more active. And then there's subcortical uh, areas where we're kind of like depleted from so much cortisol being and adrenaline being pumped out. That is very evident. That is provable. And it's also the same in any trauma. it's also found in people with dissociative disorders. So, in looking at this, it's been trying to be proved by science for years now. I think some of the first studies I saw done was Dr. Kluft, Bronman, and Bennett, and they had a big old disagreement about it back in the 90s. And then Dr. Colin Ross, Dr. Spiegel actually, Dr. Spiegel and his father, Dr. Spiegel, who went all the way back, and he was a non-believer. There were just camps in the brain, the proving the hard science of it, going all the way back to Dr. Cornelia Wilbur. She was looking for scientific proof by brain scans or EEGs. With EEGs, they look to see if there's definite wave differences between different alters switching, and they have been able to prove that, but they don't know yet, is it really the brain? Is it really a brain change that means anything, or is it that you have either narrated, the clinician has narrated a traumatic event and asked the person to go there and recall that, to think about it, or um, ask a person to switch, to try to step aside and let their alter persona come forward, or actually called on another alter. Many of us experience headaches or migraines when we're going through a switch. Not everyone, but many do. Many more experience a fading away, or a panic, or a race, or a blocking, kind of like a dizziness. Some of us faint. Some actually do fall over. There's different ways that people switch between alter aspects, egos, parts of that you developed with that you then uh, compartmentalized in your brain in another space. So in switching between these alters, whether within an EEG or in an MRI, it brings some philosophical changes to your body where you're definitely, your heart might be racing, or you might go into stall and it might lower. Or your blood volume might increase because your blood and pressure is going up, your respirations are going up, your heart rate's going up, and your blood vessels are constricting because you're getting a headache. All that would be seen on a brain scan, and the waves would change on an EEG. But what came first, the chicken or the egg? The nervous reaction, the I'm fighting a switch. I don't want to switch. Oh, I'm trying to stay still. Oh, I'm getting dizzy. Oh, my head. What is causing that? I guess for me, the what and the why is not there enough to be 100% definitive. So I wanted to mention that I think we're in a really strange time and an exciting time of where we can use brain scans to take away a lot of the stigma of mental health by, instead of just looking at um, a mental health label like schizophrenia or schizoaffective or bipolar or dissociative disorders, and then that person be stigmatized forever, or even or addictions, substance usage, or impulsivity or anger, or so many things that anything that we have trouble with. If we have trouble comprehending, if we have trouble with long-term memory, short-term memory. Amen Clinics is doing MRIs, which basically can tell you the areas of your brain you need to work on, which is a good thing. Like your blood flow is not, you've got some blocks going on, obviously where there's going to be more blood flow, you're going to be okay. Um, Stagnant thinking, increase your vitamin D, increase your writing and journaling, increase your exercise. Um, think basically at Amen clinics, they're going to tell a person what you can do to improve your brain function, no matter what your label is, which I think is kind of cool, no matter what you've been diagnosed with. But as far as I've seen a lot of videos where people are coming out and saying they can definitely diagnose MPD, D.I.D from an MRI now. That's just not true. They can't. There are a few similarities in D.I.D, MPD brains. Those same similarities can be found in trauma. Those same similarities can be found in dissociative disorders, more so, like derealization, depersonalization, and things that happen during a panic attack and during disassociation. So it makes sense that people are interpreting it that way, but there are many dissociative disorders that are not D.I.D. There's derealization, depersonalization, and dysmorphia. That the same changes that are seen in D.I.D. can be seen in that, but also borderline personality, also depression. What they can see on a brain scan is how much trauma, how long, and how old it is. So if we had a lot of trauma when we were younger and it continued and it never let up, they can actually see that. If we have more anger, if we are prone to impulsivity with anger, they can see that in the frontal and temporal lobe of the brain. If we're more prone to melancholy, they can see that with the dopamine levels and all of that. If we're more prone to um, a busy brain, not even attention deficit, but attenuating, that could be seen in the um, precuneus area of the brain and how we're taking in information from an event, storing it, and then recalling it accurately. And that could be in directives, following directions too. So, um, this all is really great for neurodiversity because it shows us we're not a label, we're not a mental health disorder. Everybody's brain is unique and fires up in a different area and works differently. Um, Now, in the EEGs, they have said, and the MRIs together, is that for a long time we've known that when you disassociate, or when there's any disassociation, there are pathways that shut down in the brain, like I think it's called axis pathways that from the cortex that shut down. The belief now is that when a person with DID disassociates and an alter comes forward, um, that actually the alters are able to get in between those pathways. They're able to run those connections, um, like almost like a maze in your brain, and they're able to go through these tunnels and pathways and nerve pathways and bypass um, being detected. So it's all gotten very sci-fi-ish and also very exciting. And I like to look at it like this. Science is always ever evolving, and if we're truly going to stay scientific about it, we can't draw conclusions where there are too many variables. We can't come to a conclusion when there's overlapping variables. Right now, there's too many overlapping variables. And what we do know is there are some significant similarities in all. If you took 20, 30 people with diagnoses or self-subscribing to MPD, D.I.D, that's their experience in life, and you put them in an MRI brain scanner, there are some significant, notable, documented, undeniable similarities in their brains that you do not see in uh, in that many areas of the brain um, in other conditions. Like you might see the hippocampus get smaller and amygdala that handles how we learn fear and fright and all that, how to respond to it. You might see that in post-traumatic stress. You might see that in the 3Ds, depression, derealization, depersonalization. You might see that in that, but then you wouldn't see the precuneus part of the brain doing what it's doing. You wouldn't see the cortical part of the brain doing what it's doing. So we're sort of there. We're sort of there, but not quite. We're not quite there. So I wanted to mention that because I always think of, I guess, in situations like this, I think of the case of Robin Williams, where he was diagnosed Parkinson's. He presented as though he had Parkinson's. He thought his life was over because he had Parkinson's, but he ended up having Dewey. And Linda Rodstadt, where for the last 10 years, she's presented as though she's had Parkinson's. She was diagnosed Parkinson's. Her brain scan said Parkinson's. She had the best of care. She had everything available to her. Parkinson's, Parkinson's, Parkinson's. Well, it turns out it's something called PSP. Now, the interesting thing with that is when we look at mind over matter, is that PSP is actually a more progressive illness than Parkinson's. Same treatment, same progression, but PSP progresses a little quicker. And Linda, that didn't happen to Linda because she didn't know it. So that is very interesting to me. And I wonder if Robin Williams had known it was not Parkinson's. It was Dewey's and what it meant. And I wonder if he understood that dementia didn't always mean like what we see on TV with Notebook, Allie and Noah, and how Allie would be lucid for a while and then totally gone for months at a time. All of these things run on a spectrum. And I like that Dr. Daniel Amen is showing that all of these things can be worked with if you're willing to do the work. Brain exercises, journaling, spiritual. He has a whole lot of supplements he is selling. That I need to say to just keep this true. And, transparent. There are some doctors that just don't get on board with Dr. Amen, as great as he is, and his objective to um, um, take away pathology and look at brain anatomy and brain structure and how we all function. But for really brainy people, it's kind of cool. Recently, Anna, well, in the past, I'd say year, Anna, since 1999, Anna Lynn McCord, who's probably best known for her her character being an actress in 90210. I'd have to say like the reboot of it in 2008. 90210. She played, I think, Naomi. Oh, got a Teen Choice Award. She was very popular. It's like this vixen, this sex vixen, this all of her roles have been very like, you know, um, warrior type, um, badass, and conniving and then sweet. Um, she went to Dr. Daniel Ammon. I'm going to go ahead and Ammon and go ahead and link that here. Because she believed she was diagnosed bipolar, but she was in treatment for having realizing that it was multiple personality or DID. She was able to integrate herself over 3 years of work with a therapist in Hollywood. And actually, Dr. Amen told her, your brain doesn't look like that of what I normally see with MPD. Um, and didn't someone diagnose you bipolar? She said yes. And he explained that a part of her brain that would have been active during hypomania moments, um, he saw more so, but more so she was lacking a blood flow in the frontal part of her brain. And then how early childhood affected the frontal lobe, the lobes of her brain. Um, and it made a lot of sense. So I'm going to link that because I just think it's all very glitzy right now, and it's all very sexy, and it's all very popular, but we need to be very careful that we don't start labeling ourselves the artsy brain, the nerdy brain, the athletic brain, because that is what in clinics is able to do, is to tell you you would be a good lawyer because the part of your brain that likes to debate, go back and forth, and blah, 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 we really see as standing out right now. Or you would probably be really good at analytical stuff because you kind of mull this over. And it's great to have, it's a great tool, but if you're trying to diminish um, diagnoses, mental health diagnoses, I just don't think we're there yet. Not even with SPECT MRIs. And again, the EEGs, it all, you have to look at the whole picture. So we're not to a place yet where you can walk into a clinic, someone can give you an MRI and say, here you go, this is your brain. And yes, you have DID. There it is right there. DID. You've got a DID brain. They can tell you have similarities found in a control group of people that they looked at with DID. So we got a ways to go. And that's all I wanted to say. And other than it's really important that we don't get ahead of ourselves with this because, and I want to say it's kind of sarcastically, if you watch the movie Split, you see what happened to the doctor that was, wanting to prove that we've got MRIs now, we've got EEGs, we've got the science that proves it, right? Well, what happened to her? So I'm just saying, we're not there yet, guys. We're not there. We're close, but no, we're not there yet. So we'll just have to wait for the science to evolve. I also like to think of today I heard on the news there's the booster battle that's going on for the pandemic. Okay, so um, many of us have heard about having to have a third booster after our 8-month time of our last shot. So if you had the J&J, 8 months after you had the J&J, if you had Moderna or Pfizer, 8 months after the second shot, you're due for your booster, and that everyone would need it, right? But now there's a whole bunch of people that are saying no, there's no need for the booster. Everyone's going to be fine. There's no need for it. Even with the Delta, there's no need for it. Well, this is kind of up in the air, and they're waiting for a meeting. And what they're basing this on is, well, Israeli studies are usually 3 to 4 months ahead of US, and they're saying you need it. So, um, I love that science unfolds. Um, Science waits for time. It doesn't get ahead of time. And I think that's really important with all of these brain studies that we're doing for D.I.D, MPD, ADD, everything out there, including medical things that and I just wanted to share this really quick. I was once in a hospital where I was sharing a room with a lady that had gotten very dizzy and fallen down. And um, she presented as she had had a stroke. Part of her face had gone, her arm was weak, her leg was weak, she wasn't talking very well, and she seemed confused. Um, Her husband was a doctor and got her in there within 36 hours because he knew they could see on a CAT scan a bleed right away, and they could definitely see in an MRI, and they could help her within 36 hours. But all the doctors came back and they were really talking like high, high doctor lingo because her husband was there. Um, Saying pretty much we don't see any sign of this. We see this over here happen. We see this over here. We see this, which could be the palsy in the face or the arm, but nothing that's indicating a definite bleed. And we could wait it out, and if there's another event over the 36-hour period, that would be the tell. But even though you got her here in time, we don't see any significant anything. And she ended up actually getting better as she was there. As the night went on, she could talk better. They got her up and they walked her. And they really didn't know what that was. It was some kind of episode. It wasn't a transient stroke. They ruled that out. It wasn't a bleed. It wasn't a tumor. It wasn't. So, um, sometimes you just don't know. And I think the smartest thing we could say is we don't know yet. A lot of things, unless it's frankly there all the time, because blood volume changes, heart rate changes, respirations change, blood pressure changes, perspiration changes, um, hormones change, adrenaline releases, cortisol releases, all of that changes everything in the brain. So if you're um, releasing a lot of endorphins, your amygdala is going to look different. If you're, or cortisol, I'm sorry, if you're releasing a lot of endorphins, your dopamine is going to look different, your hippocampus, all these things are affected by then other things. And unless we take that all into consideration, I'm not ready to accept that we can frankly diagnose, hand a person a certificate, and say, got a DID brain. So I just wanted to make that video and tell you where I'm at with it's exciting, but we're not there yet. I don't think. All right, take care, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Thanks for hanging in.